The Chinese regime has teamed up with international criminal cartels to pump the West full of drugs and dirty money. And it's all happening right under our government's nose. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. The Chinese Communist Party is at war with the West. This isn't a 20th century boots on the ground kind of warfare. China has brought war into the 21st century through a massive, coordinated campaign of global terror, using links to triads and our own politicians' greed to undermine democracy. Joining me today to talk about this is Sam Cooper. He's an award-winning Canadian investigative journalist and author of the new book, Willful Blindness: How a Network of Narcos, Tycoons, and CCP Agents Infiltrated the West. Sam, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So your book is Willful Blindness: How a Network of Narcos, Tycoons, and CCP Agents Infiltrated the West. So, tell us, how did a network of narcos, tycoons, and CCP agents infiltrate the West?
It's a very complex story, but to simplify it, really this starts in Hong Kong. My book gets into a corruption case that happened in Canada's High Commission. Tycoons that are very powerful in Hong Kong and connected to drug and casino money laundering triads wanted to immigrate to Canada. They were able to allegedly corrupt Canadian officials and immigrate and invest, especially in the city of Vancouver. And their connections were both to the Chinese Communist Party at a high level for political reasons and to drug traffickers. They used casinos to launder money. They used British Columbia casinos brazenly. Egregious money laundering. We're talking bags of cash, hockey bags with from $500,000 to $1 million in $20 bills. This was a way for corruption suspects to get money out of China using organized crime underground banking. But there was also a scheme where intelligence agents were using organized crime. And so you can see when money flows out of China, it's not just corruption involved. There was a level of espionage with the ultimate goal of influencing Canadian politics and using Canada's economy to get a foothold, really, for Chinese state activity in the West.
So this is the Chinese Communist Party actively using connections to its business elites, underground triads, to pump money into the West through drugs and human trafficking. That's also part of this as well, and influencing Canadian politicians.
That's right. In a boiled down nutshell, organized crime is working hand in hand with the Chinese Communist Party. My book showed examples of people who on the one hand are alleged gangsters and also involved in intelligence activity, also involved in, at least on the surface, what is put forward as a legitimate business activity. So when you have people of great wealth that have established themselves in Hong Kong and are being used in a symbiotic sort of dark alliance by the party in Beijing, this leads to opportunities to influence Western politicians, to donate money to Western political parties, to try to control diaspora communities in cities like Vancouver and Toronto, to the extent where you have people that are, to use a simple term, being run through Chinese consulate officials, working together with casino money laundering gangs to rub shoulders with Canadian politicians. And in the darkest cases, the same people I found were harassing or politically opposing democracy activists, Hong Kong Canadians, Chinese Canadian dissidents, Uyghurs, members of the Falun Gong societies in Canada.
So not only does the Chinese government know about this, but the Canadian government does as well?
That's a difficult one. On the casino money laundering and organized crime side, what my book shows is indeed there was willful blindness. There had to be. The police knew about these hockey bags of cash coming into casinos. They knew that it was coming through the hands of persons who were loan sharks, persons who were high-level drug traffickers under investigation while either lending money or themselves high-rolling inside, for example, the Richmond River Rock Casino. These are known high-level organized crime RCMP targets. This was known by everyone from people working in the casinos to police to high-level government officials. It was known that this was seen to be by the good investigators as high-level drug money laundering using BC casinos, and it was allowed to happen. Is the intelligence side of this operation allowed to happen? My book didn't get into that level of willful blindness, but it's reasonable to believe that the people, there are politicians in Canada that understand that they're dealing with gangsters and people from other governments asking them to act against their country's interests. So at some level, the intelligence, organized crime influence nexus is known in Canada among politicians, among regulators.
So how did you get started writing this book?
I got started writing this book. I have to take a step back and look at the days when I was a young journalism student back in 2005 at Guerre College in Vancouver, studying the craft of journalism. And I saw the downtown east side, which literally is war zone conditions where thousands of addicts are, clinging on to life. They are, in many cases, of course, on government subsidies that unfortunately, in many cases, are spent immediately, on heroin or fentanyl. I couldn't understand that scenario in Vancouver as, how is this happening in a Western city? How is this open air drug market allowed to continue? I couldn't figure it out. Then I started to look at real estate in Vancouver. Why were the prices just, so far out of reach of the average incomes? Why is this the the capital of supercars in North America, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, when people aren't declaring, incomes to compare with other big cities in Canada or United States? And the answer was this has become a narco hub where there's so much narcotics flowing in from offshore, so much addiction, so much money laundering has to occur, and that had to have an influence on housing prices. I looked into those issues, started to put them together, and this is what led me to sort of these higher level later investigations where I saw that the intelligence angle from other countries such as China and Iran using organized crime in cities like Vancouver and Toronto was very present.
I imagine this must have been shocking for you to uncover.
I never stopped being shocked. From those moments in 2005 as a young student, looking at the devastation in the downtown east side. Paramedics are trained. They take war zone training to work out of ambulances in the downtown east side of Vancouver because this is the epicenter of death related to heroin and now fentanyl. I couldn't understand it, and that was shocking. Real estate prices, I couldn't understand it. Going fast forward to 2015, hockey bags of cash, $500,000 openly coming into the casino night after night. This doesn't happen even in Las Vegas. It doesn't happen in Macau. Why is it happening in Vancouver? Canada, a supposed upright country with the rule of law. Didn't make sense. And so by 2017, when I'm starting to look at, let's just say, a high-level People's Liberation Army veteran, which with known to be a high-level organized crime suspect, and yet meeting with Canadian politicians, very chummy with Chinese consulate officials, it doesn't make sense. How is this happening on the west coast of Canada, where we have this nexus of organized crime and Chinese state actors? How is this activity explained? I still can't explain why this is occurring in Canada. I can say it is occurring.
Yeah, the line is so blurry between, triad member, PLA member, and Communist Party member. I talk a lot about unrestricted warfare or asymmetrical warfare, and from everything you're telling me, this really sounds like this is the kind of drug warfare they're talking about, or even the how the housing prices are being through the roof. It really seemed like this is an aspect of this sort of asymmetric warfare.
There, people have different levels of comfort looking at the concept of, gray zone conflict or hostile state activity just below, armed conflict, kinetic war. Do states such as Iran and China use these asymmetric tactics? And I would argue that it's hard to argue a level of total strategic control in countries such as China, Iran. But I do think there is the pattern of states such as China using activities that are harmful to other countries, perhaps allowing or not cracking down on factories producing fentanyl because China is making so much money from the production of pharmaceuticals. And there are corrupt officials in China that are doing business with drug gangs. There are corrupt officials that are making, tremendous amounts of money in trade-based money laundering. China's economy making so much money from all of this rolled together that why would they crack down on it? My sources in intelligence or the police would say, if they're not cooperating with Canada, when Canada goes to them and says, can you work with us on fentanyl trafficking? And China says, well, maybe if we allow you, if you let us put in our agents to go after our economic fugitives, we'll work with you. And Canada says, I'm sorry, we can't allow that covert fox hunt activity to occur in our country. And China says, okay, then no help on fentanyl. What do we have here? This is sort of a hostage diplomacy style of state activity. So are they directing those shipments of fentanyl to cities in Canada, United States, Australia? I don't know that level of direct warfare is happening. I do know an omission of enforcement is happening in China, and why.
So what is being done about this problem? Are Canadian officials doing anything now that your book has come out?
Well, the book's only been out for less than 2 weeks. I can say that it's starting to make some waves. People in law enforcement and, of course, intelligence are taking it very seriously. Here's the rub. Some would say Canada's government hasn't been taking people in intelligence and law enforcement themselves seriously. This gets into the question of why is the concept of a 5G network run by Huawei still a possibility in Canada when countries such as Australia and the United States have completely ruled it out. So I'm optimistic that my book, it has the chance to, open up the eyes of mainstream readers, if you will, and for them to start talking to their local politician and saying, why aren't you acting on these, what look like very serious issues? And you would hope once that starts to happen that politicians, high-level politicians in Ottawa, Canada's federal government, do start to take actions. But I have to say we're in a position where countries such as Australia, United States, I'm told are about a decade ahead of Canada in terms of dealing with this, first of all, interference from countries such as Iran and China, and this nexus of organized crime working with state actors in countries such as China and Iran.
I bet that really affects the security dialogue between Canada and, we'll say, the other Five Eyes countries.
That's undeniable. My sources would say Canada is starting to look like not a great partner, and it's not due to the police. It's not due to CSIS. These are very, when they're supported, when they have their best leadership in place, these are leading international agencies. But Canada, for reasons that come from the ground up or maybe the top down, doesn't seem to be pulling its weight in intelligence and law enforcement internationally. And so I think that's a huge problem where Canada, we see, let me give you an example. Canada's former top police intelligence official is now being accused of working with some of the worst gangsters and drug traffickers in the world, profiting from helping them evade detection. This would be a form of protection of gangsters that we might expect in a country like China. It's happening in Canada, allegedly. Was this person, Mr. Ortis, perhaps working for hostile states as well to misdirect Canada's policing investigations, to misdirect our intelligence? That's an open question. His case remains to be tried, and yet the allegations it just follows that Australia and the United States would start to hold on to their cards. They'd start to hold on to their high side intel and not share with Canada. So it's a problem, absolutely.
Well, Sam, the book is an absolutely fascinating read. I recommend it to anyone watching, and I'll put a link below. For anyone watching, where can they follow you?
They can follow me on Twitter at Scooper Cooper, and they can also watch for my stories online on the internet.
Well, thanks, Sam. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. If you want more, Shelley, Matt, and I had Sam Cooper on our podcast for an hour to hear more of the crazy stories of what's happening with Chinese criminal gangs in Canada and around the world. So check that out on China Unscripted. Link is below. And also, you can now order Sam Cooper's book, Willful Blindness, on Amazon. The link is also below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.